It's the end of May, which means it's the end of Star Wars month. And with the recent release of Star Wars Tales of the Empire, which came out earlier this month, we were treated to two anthology episode trilogies following Bear Sophie and Morgan Elsbeth. So these are two characters that I released two YouTube shorts pretty much describing exactly what happens in those two trilogies in Tales of the Empire. So if you want to check that out, go ahead. If you would rather see the episodes on Disney+, you can do that as well. But something else that we received actually at the end of last month, coming into Star Wars month, was the finale for The Bad Batch, which was the Clone Wars sequel series, where it ended with our heroes winning as expected, but surprisingly ended with a massive time jump, showing one of the main characters, Omega, and Hunter, speaking as Omega prepares to join the rebels in the war. So the entire series takes place right after the events of the Clone Wars, so they do a massive time jump closer to the time of A New Hope and films like that. So this begs the question, what's next for Omega? A show? A movie? And honestly, what's next for Clone Wars style animation if both of those projects, Tales of the Empire and Bad Batch, just finished? That's another question that I have. Well, I believe there's going to be another season of these Tales shows, because there was Tales of the Jedi, now Tales of the Empire, and think there are three that they could do with Tales of the Rebels, which I'll get more into later, Tales of the Sith, which I do want to discuss in another video what my idea for that would be, and Tales of the First Order. Now, I don't think Omega's going to become a Sith, and she's definitely not actively fighting during the First Order. So, as you can probably guess, my proposal for where Omega will show up next is in a Tales of the Rebels TV series. So, if they do Tales of the Rebels, I feel like they'll keep on with that theme of two trilogies that are anthology series. One of those two anthology series would be related to Omega. So before I go into what they would do with Omega, I'll just quickly mention two ideas that I have for what the other anthology trilogy could be. I think two interesting concepts. So first is Wedge Antilles and the Rogue Squadron. Dependent on Patty Jenkins' film of the Rogue Squadron. However, I personally don't care to see another Star Wars film during the Skywalker saga for the time being, and would rather they expand with the Rogue Squadron and in this time period with Clone Wars style series, which is what this is. It could honestly be an energetic trilogy that's fun to see since it's more starship-based combat, which would be a new take for this Tales of the Jedi, Tales of the Empire storyline. Now, if they are still going to do the Rogue Squadron movie, another idea I have is Hera and show her story in the aftermath of the Rebels finale up until the Battle of Endor. So we saw a little of this in Forces of Destiny, which is the YouTube original series, which follows pretty much every character that you can imagine that's a female in this world. So we had that, and it does show that Hera was on Endor during the Battle of Endor and actually did meet with Leia and Han. So that could be an interesting thing to see. But I think 3 full episodes in this series showing her first mission after losing Kanan, her meeting Han and Leia and becoming General of the Rebellion, and the last episode showing her perspective of the Battle of Endor would be great to see. It would be a very emotional trilogy that, once again, like the Wedge Antilles and the Rogue Squadron storyline, would be fun to see as well because it's more starship-based combat. Personally, I would prefer to see the Wedge Antilles story just because we've gotten a lot of Hera, and Wedge is a character that has always not gotten enough screen time. He is the leader of Rogue Squadron, so learning how he got to that position would be really cool to see. But with this, we can jump into what this video is about with Omega in the Rebellion. So, to start it off, in my opinion, the first episode should show her in the aftermath of the Bad Batch finale, right after that ending, where we see her say her final goodbye to the world that she was on, her final goodbye to Hunter, and she flies off to join the rebels. And what I think would be interesting to see is she goes there and we see an older Rex who is fighting in the war and puts in a good word for Omega to join. And obviously we saw Rex in the series Star Wars Rebels, so we know that he's helping them in that series even though he's much older. So to see him still there, I think that would be very cool to see. Something that I would want to see personally is, because she has the bow and arrow, I feel like one scene that's lived with me for a while has been the Hunger Games scene where Katniss is training and she just hits the apple from far away. Honestly, you do something like that, I just think it would be pretty cool to see, actually making Omega seem like an interesting character, that she's not just there because now she's that clone girl. No, she's actually lived up to her name, and now she actually has to be a warrior. So if you can make her a warrior in this trilogy, I think a lot more people would respect her character. That I know a lot of people didn't like her character in The Bad Batch. So you do something like that just to show her first presence when they're checking to see if she can actually help fight for the rebellion. I think that would be cool. Now, the end of the episode, I believe, should show Rex speaking with Omega and showing her who she'll be taking orders from, as the leader of their team or their specific squadron is going to be Ahsoka. And it's obviously going to be an older Ahsoka. Second, this episode is going to show Omega and Rex on a mission together on Jedha as they team up with Chiru Imwe and Baze Malbus before the events of Rogue One, where Omega and her story inspires the Chiru and Baze to help in the fight. But they stay on Jedha by the end of the episode, but it also gives a reason as to why they were so willing to help in Rogue One, to fight against the Empire. Now, in the turn, Chiru and his way of life also inspires Omega to tell Ahsoka her full story and her potentially having the Force inside of her, with Ahsoka ready to train her by the end of the episode. Something that we learned in The Bad Batch Season 3 is that Omega may be Force sensitive. She didn't really pass Asajj Ventress's test, but if she is willing to tell Ahsoka by this time, maybe at the beginning of this episode, you establish that she's already told Rex that she has this feeling that she may be able to help in a different way. So she tells Rex, but she's fearful to tell Ahsoka, and Chiru pretty much just helps her know that the Force is inside of you, the Force is inside of all of us. You just have to tell her, and yeah, I think that would be a pretty cool storyline to see. And it would help build up to the following episode, which I'll get into later. But for now, before leaving the planet of Jedha, since it is a planet that's known for Kyber crystals, Chiru will actually gift Omega a green Kyber crystal. Now, by the end of the episode, one of the soldiers who survived the fight against Omega and Rex was the man who would eventually become Moff Gideon. And he actually sees a resemblance between Omega, Rex, and the rest of the clones. By the end of the episode, we'll see Gideon approach a higher ranked officer, claiming he studied Project Necromancer and believes it should be brought back to life because he believes he found a clone that may be susceptible to the tests and grant a positive M-count exam. And he believes this just because he saw the way that Omega was fighting, that she was calling out the Force. Obviously, she wasn't actually using the Force. It was more so in a way that Chiru was doing it, where he was saying, I'm one with the Force is with me. Maybe she does that in one scene in the episode. Moff Gideon gets this idea that maybe she is the Force-sensitive clone. And there we go. Project Necromancer is back up and running. So the third episode is going to start with seeing Ahsoka leading what I'm going to call the 502nd Squadron, named after the 501st Legion, which sees former clones like Rex, Force sensitives of Ava, Jax, Baron, Sammy, and Sabine, alongside Force sensitive Omega, all led by Ahsoka. So a lot of those characters that I mentioned that are Force sensitive were seen in Season 3 of Bad Batch that were Force sensitive kids. And then obviously Sabine is a character that wasn't Force sensitive in Rebels, but for some reason in Ahsoka, she was one of the strongest Force wielders, which makes no sense, but if you can have this series also help as an in-between point for that to help explain that, let's do it. So the Force sensitives are similar to the Praetorian Guards, where they use light weapons those characters, the Praetorian Guards, we saw them in The Last Jedi. So if you can have them use those light weapons instead of necessarily lightsabers, you won't be saying that it's just an army of Jedi during this era, which makes no sense because we never knew that happened. So you just have them use these light weapons. I think that would be a much better option. Omega will continue using her energy bow. The only difference is it'll have a Kyber crystal core with the Kyber crystal that was given to her by Chiru Imwe in the second episode. That Kyber crystal in the core is actually going to strengthen the energy. It's going to make it green instead, and it's going to make her be able to utilize this weapon in very unique ways. And then obviously Sabine is just going to keep her suit on. She's actually not going to be using any light weapon. So the 502nd goes on a mission to an empire base on Mustafar, which had been abandoned by Darth Vader by the start of Empire Strikes Back, and had been converted into an apparent cloning facility, which speaks to Rex and Omega. Mustafar is a dangerous place where even a Jedi Knight like Anakin can almost meet his fate. So we'll see most of the team, including all of the Jedi younglings from the Bad Batch, meet their doom. The surviving members will get separated, and we'll see Ahsoka and Sabine's broken relationship continue breaking as seen in the show Ahsoka, where they'll have to fix a relationship in that show. And we'll also see Rex and Omega meet face to face with Gideon, who stabs Rex through the chest with the Darksaber and defeats Omega in battle, but says that he has greater plans for her as he gets in his ship after stunning her with a blaster as they fly away to his next stop, setting up a future for Project Necromancer, which will lead into The Mandalorian. Now, the final scene of this episode will show Ahsoka finding the body of Rex as they share a final moment together. It's obviously going to be very sad seeing Ahsoka and Rex in his final moment. Now, in that same moment, Ahsoka receives a comm call from Mon Mothma saying Vader and the Emperor are dead and the war has been won, but she hangs up with no reaction, showing that this mission on Mustafar and all the lives lost have left a hole in Ahsoka, which helps explain why she isn't leading the effort with Luke to rebuild the Jedi Order, eventually when we see it being rebuilt in The Mandalorian Season 2. So, with this, we have, in some ways, my proposal for a Tales of the Rebels show, but more so we have my proposal for Omega's next Star Wars appearance. And I think, personally, it's the best way to connect this cloning storyline that they've been trying to do through The Bad Batch, The Mandalorian, and the sequel series. I got extremely excited running the third episode through my mind, and now would love to see Tales of the Rebels go down this way. Just seeing them go back to Mustafar, seeing some of the same set pieces, obviously now animated, but from Revenge of the Sith, and seeing that in that show, seeing all the battles that'll take place, seeing Omega as an actual warrior, being able to use her bow and having it be powered by the Kyber crystal. I feel like you can do a lot of interesting things with her story. And then whether they choose to do the Hera story, the Wedge Antilles story for the other anthology trilogy, or if they choose to do something else, who knows? Maybe there are other ideas that are out there. But with that, thanks for watching this video. Let me know down in the comments if you would watch this Tales of the Rebels show. If you have any other ideas of what could fit in this Tales of the Rebels show instead of doing the Wedge Antilles or Hera Syndulla storyline. See you next time on Big Flick Energy.